Please comment and subscribe.
Yes, it really, because it's ground that hadn't been broken. I went around from studio to studio with other scripts.
To stay away, to get off my lawn, boy.
Oh, yeah, it was a horrible day.
Thank you. Well, actually,
Little thing, so thank you very much.
Let them go the distance. Let them fight for something besides money, for human dignity. I think a lot of it has to do with also having a daughter.
Yeah.
They get to wear the funny socks. They get to, the costume, the beret.
Because my one love was to at least fail on my own terms. I wanted to see if I could act, because all these bit parts that you're talking about, you really couldn't say this kid had talent or it was just a big fake.
In the office. I mean, not like, okay, with diapers, just walking around. I go, when's he going to take a dump? I mean,
Yeah, well, this is unbelievable.
what secretary signs up for that?
No. Not on either score. I thought that Rocky would appeal to a certain segment of, you might say, urban inner city dwellers.
She's beautiful.
I've never enjoyed anything quite so much in my life as this particular time in my life, so I'm very grateful. I should have done this years earlier. Snodgrass, Lee J. Cobb.
Or you cannot take a gun that usually is mounted on a helicopter, hold it with one arm, wrap bullets around your neck, and just run through the woods naked.
Harvey Keitel, Susan Sarandon.
But anyway, after we do our little tete-a-tete talking, he goes, "You want to carve a pumpkin?"
And I thought perhaps at best financially that it would break even.
And I thought, wow, this is all about loneliness and starting over, because the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody is like, drop your life, and literally you were shipped out somewhere. You go, how do I start over? I'm like 76 years old. But that's the beauty. He starts a new family there, but there's no Italians, there's no mafia guys, so I'm getting like computer nerds.
Where everything goes according to their plan. I mean, it was incredible. They just kept falling out. It was like fate was saying, wait a minute, we've got one more person for you to see.
It's interesting because it's very hard to find a new concept, but this is the guy who takes a fall for someone, goes to jail for 25 years, keeps his mouth shut, expecting to be rewarded by his mafia family. Instead, he's shipped out to Tulsa because they want to get rid of him, basically to drop dead and die.
And Carl Weathers came in, last one at the end of a long day. It was 8 o'clock at night. Talia came in. She was reluctant. Her husband almost had to drag her in.
But what they didn't count on is when a person hasn't had that type of money, they really don't miss it. In other words,
I know where you're going with this.
A man who goes from a total selfless shell to being an existing human form. I am kind of a thing.
They said, like, you don't know what you're doing.
But all the police that live there work in New York City. They'll work in New York, but they don't want to live here. So they create their own little cop land.
but more than that, I knew that if I sold it, even for $500,000, I knew that after the money was gone, I would become very bitter for having sold out. Because
it's home team.
Yeah.
So we had a pumpkin carving contest, and I'm glad to say that I went down, got the head off, both eyes, the nose, the mouth done before he got one eyeball.
And I played this sheriff who is basically doesn't care much about his life, his predicament. He's almost totally deaf. He had rescued his girlfriend years earlier and had. I could be playing bullies and people like that Jack Lemmon would be beating up in films and always one falling down. I never thought that it would ever transcend into a character where he would be somewhat likable. It wasn't an optimistic script. I wrote it kind of for myself, and it was very pessimistic and very down because I was feeling down and negative about myself and my life in general. So the script that I had written certainly wouldn't have sold. Then I went to the Chuck Wepner fight with Ali, fighting him. I said, this is a much better ending. Instead of the man taking a dive. This town of Copland, and I am now confronted with this moral dilemma. Do I let this murderer get away, or do I do, for once in my life, the noble thing? But in doing that, I alienate my entire life, all my friends, and the people that I thought cared about me.
Pet my donkey, stroke my horse. I come over, and there are these fuzzy things in his office, a donkey and a pony.
It was not supposed to be billed as anything other, so the whole thing kind of like is like an experiment that got out of control in a biology lab.
It went up to about $265,000.
It was a miracle. It's all the actors that were originally hired when they were intended to be hired fell out.
You cannot take on half the world with a knife.
In other words, if you haven't ridden in a Rolls Royce, you don't mind bouncing around in a Volkswagen. You don't have that frame of reference.
That's where my troubles began originally. You try to figure out how things like that happen, and it's just something that if you could only put a label on it, you'd be the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
It's just, an accidental shooting takes place in New York, and they hide the cop who supposedly did it.
Yeah, this is what happens when you get a little bit older. No, I'm doing a reality show, and I gave him a call. He says, yeah, can I come over? He goes, yeah, come on over. I'll bring my donkey. You can pet it.
In this film deals with some very serious subject matter, and it deals with police corruption, racism, it deals with political maneuvering, it deals with just alienation.
And the studios, when they made it, they thought that Rocky was being designed primarily for second billing and drive-in movies. It was made as a Bill B film.
Gone deaf, and then has basically been forgotten. He never got anywhere in his life. So out of kindness, they made him a local town sheriff.
That's only half the story.
Yeah.
He got the money because I wanted him to really shut up.